Our story begins in 1989 in Norway and takes place at night in a forest. From the ground, a hand suddenly emerges. There is a car on the road, and a young boy comes out of it, wanting to answer the call of nature. Then, we see another boy running without a shirt. He runs out onto the road, where a passing truck almost hits him. By slightly swerving, the truck instead hits the car the other boy came out from, causing it to catch on fire. The boy watches it burn, knowing that his parents are inside. Later, we see a man parking his car on the road of that forest and examining a map of the area. Shortly after, a funeral car arrives. The driver lowers his window and calls the man Kai Kas. He says they have been waiting for him, before extending his arm to offer his condolences to Kai. While riding an elevator together, the driver tells Kai he remembers him from the newspapers. Since Kai tells him it has been 19 years since the incident, we can reasonably guess by now that he was the boy who watched the car burn. The other man mentions it must be strange to be back after all those years. Soon, he brings Kai to a room where a lady lies, covered. Kai wants this woman to burn. He advises that whatever happened long ago, it's best kept in the past. Left alone, Kai removes her face covering, revealing that she is his mother. Once again, he expresses intent to incinerate her. He makes sudden hand movements in front of her to check if she is truly deceased. There doesn't seem to be any reason why she shouldn't be. He also feels the need to pull her finger towards the back of her hand. She still does not respond in any way. After giving a sentimental kiss, she suddenly grabs his hand and forms a scary expression, looking at him. Kai backs up against the wall, but soon realizes that he's just hallucinating. As Kai is leaving the building, a lady calls out to him, and she seems to know him. He then turns to see a lady wearing a cast on her arm. She offers her condolences prior to informing him that he is inheriting everything. His mother's house is his. She also gives him a plastic bag of his mother's belongings, the items she had on her when she passed away. Later, while driving, Kai sees a lady attempting to hitchhike. Since he doesn't stop, a guy comes out and tosses a bike tire in Kai's direction. Eventually, he arrives at a house. After entering it, he looks at a certain door for a few uncomfortable seconds. Looking closely, we notice that he enters the house holding 2 containers of gasoline. He sets them down to look into a room that has an unusually high pile of rag dolls. Kai continues to look at more things there that seem to unnerve him. Entering a washroom on the 2nd floor, he inspects a bottle of perfume or cologne. He puts some of it on himself. Once he sees a mirror, he starts hallucinating. An image of his mom is in the reflection, taking such a frightening form. After recovering from that, he glances at the bathtub with discomfort. It is full of disgusting-looking water. He remembers the time his mom held by force. Following this, Kai collects a newspaper from 1989. He reads about a car crash that resulted in the demise of a man and his wife. Their son, however, disappeared. Of course, the newspaper is referring to the situation of Kai's distant past. There is also a photo there of Kai's young self. He decides to just burn the newspaper. However, that prompts him to remember the time he watched the car burn. Kai looks at the door, which makes him feel uneasy. He hesitates to open it at first, but eventually does it. Inside that room, there are stairs leading down to a place Kai does not want to descend to. He leaves, looking at a telephone nearby. Its receiver is not connected to the rest of the phone. It is also emitting some slight static. Curiosity causes him to pick it up to ask if anyone is on the other line. At that moment, a red ball rolls behind him. What does one do when something like that happens? For Kai, the answer is to pick up the ball and venture into the place from which it came. He looks downstairs again, before rolling the red ball down there and following the object. Once he's down there, the ball comes back to him. While reaching to pick it up, a hand suddenly grabs his. This frightening turn of events makes him rush out of there, and even exits the house. In the process of leaving, Kai's hand is wounded. While checking his injury, he looks up at a window and notices someone is watching him. He goes back into the house to look at the glass ceiling. Not long after, something breaks through the glass and lands on the floor. Kai goes to where his gasoline tanks are, maybe wanting to use them. But he is interrupted by someone shining a flashlight nearby. The person holding it is none other than the lady he saw at the building earlier. She is Sarah, inquiring if everything is okay. Although things don't look like they are, the man doesn't want to bring attention to that. Sarah wonders what happened there. So Kai puts forward the idea that some kids might have broken in. Shortly after, she hears the door make a sound. Then after looking around for less than a minute, she agrees that someone might be intruding. Outside, Sarah asks if selling the house could be better than burning it. Kai simply says it's not for sale. As policewoman, Sarah reminds him that burning the house is illegal. This gives her a reason to take the gasoline tanks away from him. When she asks if he remembers her, he doesn't say anything. The next scene, we see Kai in a hotel. When a lady walks down the stairs, he asks for a room. The receptionist, named Miriam, tells him he needs to book a room in advance. Soon, she calls someone on the phone. She tells the person she is speaking to that he is standing in front of her, speaking as if Kai is an expected guest. After a short conversation, Miriam instantly gives Kai the keys to a room. The protagonist seems to have quite a reputation. Before leaving, Miriam tells him his mom liked to eat a good amount of food. As he is about to open the door to his room, Miriam talks to him again and reveals that there is a shortcut from the hotel to his house. Inside his room, he notices a soothing wallpaper depicting the woods. He also looks out the window and sees his house in the forest. Later, while sleeping, he has a vivid nightmare of being his mom in the bathtub. However, the boy in the water doesn't look like him. Instead, he is the other one we saw at the start of the film, the one who made the truck swerve on the road. At a different time, Kai is drinking shots at the hotel bar, with Miriam supplying the drinks to him. After several shots, he asks her to bill it to his room. However, she insists that it's on the house. Once again, Kai seems like someone with quite the local reputation. Miriam's statement prompts him to admit that he always liked her. After a short while, Sarah comes to join him. She compliments him for doing well for himself in all this time. She also reveals having checked his record. We find out that Kai was in 4 orphanages and had 3 foster care families. One particular statement addressed to him was regarding being on his best behavior. The somewhat bad news Sarah has for him is that some people don't like that he returned. Then comes the curious question. She asks him what truly happened on that unfortunate night. All Kai responds with is an unsatisfactory question of his own, which is asking if she read the reports. About 100 times is what she answers. Nothing further is discussed about this shrouded topic. Following this, Kai sits in his room. Someone slips something under his door. From behind it, a lady informs him he is staying in the room that Peter stayed in. We have no idea who that is. The item slipped is a framed photo. When Kai starts removing the dust on it, the phone interrupts him with its ringing. Picking it up, he hears some music playing, so he decides to put it down. Afterward, he removes the dust on the photo only to see his young self holding a red ball. He is troubled by the memory of going down those stairs earlier. Kai then goes to the front desk to nervously ring the service bell. No one comes to him, though there is a registration book there that he checks. It contains a message stating that Peter has seen the waterfall, a big one. After that, some blood drips on the page, so he checks if it's dripping from him. Fortunately, it isn't. It seems like seeing this message triggers a realization, causing him to run through the forest and taking a shortcut to get to his house. Back in the home, that phone's receiver is separate from the phone again. Therefore, Kai places it in its proper spot. When it starts ringing, he smashes it. He then starts searching frantically for something in the room, and then descends stairs. What he finds is a ball, one that isn't red. Shortly after, he hears a sound coming from upstairs. Kai slowly ascends to find a couple there. He hears them breaking things. He also watches a girl cradle one of the rag dolls. Soon, Kai sees her following the guy somewhere. She calls out to the guy, yet he does not answer. Before long, she sees him come out. However, it isn't him. Wearing the guy's red hooded sweater is none other than a doll that suddenly looks at her. Of course, this scares and causes her to flee the house. She sits outside, texting someone telling them that she wants to go home. To her dismay, the doll is out with her to scare her a second time. The poor girl runs until she reaches a fence. She is left with no choice except to hide in an opening under the house. Whatever this being is, it walks past her, unaware of her hiding spot. Unfortunately, her phone rings, allowing the doll to locate and catch her. We don't see what else happens to this girl. Back in the hotel, Kai showers. We see blood falling on the shower floor. He takes the band-aid off his palm to see his injury is now completely gone. Its total disappearance confuses him. In the next scene, we see 2 guys in the woods who located a campsite. One of them radios Sarah, saying they found a tent with a fire that is still burning. In his room, Kai watches the phone ring. He hesitates to answer it, but he does. It is Sarah, asking him if he can come to the house now. She says something happened and people worried. While Kai is driving there, he gets stopped by a traffic officer. The man who stops him, Roy, recognizes Kai. He also notices that Kai's headlight is broken. Roy asks if he can open the trunk, something Kai does not allow. So they walk away while he goes back into his car. Unfortunately, the road is still blocked for him in both directions because Roy insists on wanting to check the trunk. This situation forces Kai to pretend to agree with the inspection. However, once they are near the trunk, Kai slams Roy's head against it. At that moment, Sarah arrives. They sit in his car and she informs him that people are nervous now due to some kids having gone missing. She tells Kai about a guy wearing a red hooded sweater on who was seen near Kai's house yesterday. Later, Kai walks inside his house, finding another man there. He introduces himself as Anders. Sarah is there as well, wanting to check the basement. Down there, Anders starts looking carelessly through some containers. This behavior angers Kai, so he pins Anders against the wall. Thankfully, Sarah breaks them up and orders Anders to go upstairs. Just then, Kai turns a lever, revealing a hidden door in the wall. Going through it, the duo finds themselves in an impoverished living area. This is where Kai shares the sad truth with Sarah. He grew up in that place. One important aspect of that place is the fact that no one can hear someone who's down there. We learn that his mom used to on him for wetting the bed. He shows his stomach, which is evidence of his words being true. This shocks Sarah. She feels sorry for Kai. After hearing what he went through, Kai says that every night he tried to escape that room. Upstairs, Sarah wants to ask Kai more questions. She wants to know where he was last night. He talks about getting a phone call that made him think that it came from this house. Thus, he went there to see who may have called. The missing kids get mentioned. Kai says they went into the woods upon his arrival. For some reason, he adds they went with Peter. We learn through Sarah that Peter is someone who fell into a waterfall years ago. Talking about the boy, Kai remembered the photo of him in the hotel, the one where he is holding a red ball. It turns out that the photo was not of Kai. The boy that looks very much like his younger self is actually Peter. Afterward, Kai stands on the road, remembering the accident from the distant past. We see a flashback of the incident, a complete one, based on Kai's memories. We discover that he is that other unkempt boy. The clean one is Peter. He seems to remember his mother taking Peter away. Later, as Kai drives, he feels anger. He looks at the red ball in the passenger seat. When he touches it, he sees a silhouette of someone in red running across the road. It suddenly gets him to step on the brakes, followed by getting out of the car to look around. When he gets back in, a man is sitting inside. The man assures Kai that it wasn't his fault, then asks him to drive. Obeying the man, Kai drives while listening to him talk. His hand is wounded. They ride until they stop at some medical site in the woods. This is where the man's injury gets tended to. Out of nowhere, Kai sees a boy sitting there, wearing a Native American headgear, but quickly vanishes. A desperate man then comes to Kai, holding a photo of his daughter. He asks if Kai has seen her. At the same time, a guard dog runs up to Kai, barking at him. Roy is there, demanding that he empties his pockets, and the man complies. The father picks up an item and says it belongs to his daughter. Kai reveals that he found it at his house, but clarifies that he doesn't know what happened to her. He just knows she's been there. Roy smacks Kai, wanting him to comply better, urging him to tell the girl's father what he knows. He smacks him again, which prompts Kai to put him in a headlock. Shortly after, he lets go and starts walking alone in the woods. Eventually, Kai locates someone on the road wearing a red hooded sweater. The person is quick to vanish, so Kai runs to search for him. Once he finds him again, he just eerily stands before Kai. Our protagonist yells out to him that people are looking for him. However, the stranger does not respond. It doesn't take long for Kai to discover that whatever movement he does, the person in red mimics him like a mirror. After enough mimicking, the stranger simply walks away. Kai runs after him until he arrives at a cliff where a waterfall exists beneath it. The stranger mysteriously vanishes. Now Kai feels the need to stand at the edge of the cliff. Sarah yells out behind him, reminding him that if he falls, he will be gone forever. While moving closer to him, she points to an area where Peter's shoe was found. Unlike the shoe, Peter's body was never found back then. Elsewhere, Sarah shows Kai certain photos. She believes Peter is deceased, but at that same time entertains that idea that he doesn't exist. Then, she takes out the shoe that was found. We find out that a fisherman found the second shoe a year later, which she happens to also have. Kai inspects them and asks her if anyone untied the knot in one of the shoes, to which she admits that no one has. Her words prompt him to ask Sarah if she knows anything about shoelaces. She does not give him an answer. In his hotel room, he looks at the pair of shoes. He unties the shoelaces, then ties them another way. Thinking about it troubles him. He wonders if his mom tied the shoelaces prior to the waterfall, and if she took Peter. This idea makes him cry. Suddenly, he starts choking, and then Miriam appears in his room, having some strange kind of power over him. She sits and turns the speaker on, one that is mounted to the wall. The sound of water can be heard coming from it. Miriam asks if Kai hears a scream in the audio of the waterfall, because she hears nothing. She whispers to him, informing him that the scream is in the woods. When she leaves, he regains control of himself, but continues to suffer on the floor. He listens to the speaker to hear the sound of the woods. He soon hears a faint scream, followed by loud static noise, attacking his ears. The next scene, Kai is driving at night, heading to the house. Later, Anders arrive at the scene, together with his friend, and they spot Kai's car. Within the darkness of the woods, the red-hooded person comes out. After searching the house for Kai and failing to find him, the duo decides to leave. Anders' friend goes back inside, after forgetting his flashlight. Meanwhile, Anders calls Sarah to tell her Kai is not in the house, despite his car being parked outside. Shortly after, the red figure comes out of the house and impales Anders in the eye with a stick. He manages to pull it out, but falls a few seconds later. Following this incident, Sarah walks inside Kai's hotel room. She looks at the photo Kai told her about. Peter's head is cut out from it. What's even stranger is that he's not holding the red ball like Kai said he was. The place Kai was at the entire time was in his hidden room. That is why he could not be found. He calls out to Peter by whispering. After that, he slides the shower curtain to see two lifeless people in the bathtub. He doesn't seem surprised by their presence. They are the adolescents that went missing. Subsequently, he hears music playing. It causes him to yell out to Peter before exiting the house. Kai looks inside his car, only to see an injured person struggling to break free. Kai tries to open the door, but fails. Later, we see him sitting in shock back in the house. Sarah comes to him and listens to Kai saying they never should have entered the house. Because of that, Peter is now free. Then he lets her see the two lifeless people in the bathtub. She gives him a certain look, making him question if she thinks he had something to do with their demise. At this point, she wants him to tell her the entire truth. Kai says he told her, she just doesn't want to listen. Sarah tries to use her radio, but Kai prevents her from doing so, manhandling her. Kai tells her he will find Peter since he is the only person who can stop him. When she agrees, he lets go of her. Since Kai has his back turned away from the lady, she uses this opportunity to knock him out. As he starts regaining consciousness, Kai's memories start flooding his mind. He discovers that he is locked inside his impoverished childhood room. Calling out to Sarah does not get him a response. His memory seems to tell him to lift the drain lid on the floor. Doing that allows him to pull out a balloon. Inside the balloon, there is a chisel. Interestingly, there is also a photo of Miriam there near a microphone. The photo is old, but her current appearance remains the same. Her true identity is put into question. Kai kisses the photo before he starts chiseling the wall. Not satisfied with the slow progress, he removes the sink and smashes it against the wall, getting the job done. We see a tunnel that must have been created 2 decades ago. Going through it, Kai's hand soon emerges from the earth. This reminds us of what we observed at the start of the film. After escaping the house, he runs into the woods, and at the same time Sarah finds his escape tunnel. Roy and the other characters are there too. The father of the girl finds his daughter lifeless in the bathtub. Of course, he mourns for her, while Kai runs through the woods. His motion blends with images of his young self doing the same thing. Eventually, he settles down and sees the red figure looking at him. He quickly vanishes, prompting Kai to call out to him as Peter. In the meantime, we see Roy walking and holding a gun, hearing Kai's voice. Before long, he sees Kai, fires once, and misses. Kai is forced into hiding. Roy searches for him in the darkness of the night. His search then comes to an end, because he gets impaled by a stick from behind. At dawn, Kai sits beside the lifeless man with his rifle. Upon hearing something, he quickly readies the gun. The person in the red sweater approaches him. Kai puts the gun down and approaches the man without ill intent. He asks the stranger if he is Peter. He does not get an answer, so he removes the hood to reveal a man with an injured face. They hear dogs barking, which makes the man start behaving wildly like an animal. Kai assures Peter that he won't let them get him, and at the same time revealing that he knows where he's been. After that, the duo arrives at the cliff above the waterfall. Peter stands at the edge looking down. He soon starts behaving wildly again, so Kai has to calm him down. He has clearly been living in social isolation for a long time. He can hardly say a word. As Kai gently holds Peter's face, they both seem to non-verbally agree that it would be best for Peter to fall from the cliff. After the tragic moment, the only thing that Kai can do is cry. Shortly after, Sarah arrives, along with a helicopter hovering nearby. Kai gets on his knees and puts his hands in the air. In the final scene, Kai is riding in the helicopter with handcuffs on. Meanwhile, we observe the gasoline tank spilling downstairs in the house. This causes the building to burn, and a photo of Peter burns too. However, it isn't clear whether this is just Kai's wish or if it actually happened. There is a camera there in the helicopter, recording Kai being dressed in the red sweater. It makes us wonder who was truly responsible for all those murders. Even more so, we wonder if the adult Peter that Kai saw was real.